We've all been there, You're watching ant videos on YouTube, and you're wondering, how do I get into this hobby? Well, it's not exactly the simplest process, and just a heads up, I am not exactly an expert. I'd still classify myself as a beginning level, and it can get a little pricey with all this stuff. But this will probably be one of my longest videos yet, so here we go. Step 1, the first question of all ant keepers: where do you get the ants? Well, you've got a few options. I currently do not have many colonies, just this one carpenter ant colony that I got from Buckeye Myrmecology. There are websites like Buckeye Myrmecology, Stateside Ants, My Antics, Antkeeping, you name it. They all ship out queen ants, but they just have to be native to your area. And you can buy them. They're around $50 a pop, depending on the species, however. And they have always come live for me and very well packaged. But that's just one option. You can also go outside and look up some tutorials on how to catch ant queens and try to catch the queens yourself. Now, this is slightly harder, but a lot cheaper, because you gotta know the weather patterns. They like to fly after storms when it's rather windless, and you can actually check if a species is ready if you know where a colony is in your backyard, and you can pick up a rock and see inside of it. There's actually one in my front yard. There's a huge Tetramorium colony, and I can pick up a rock and see a ton of winged elates crawling around a few weeks before they start flying. Such as one way I know. But some people just don't have the energy, or it's not the right time of year, possibly. Obviously right now it's winter, or I wouldn't say winter, it's technically spring, but really not. But so yeah, they usually fly in the summer months. Some fly pretty close to now, like these carpenter ants. They fly earlier in the year because their colonies take longer to mature. And some people think about excavating colonies, although I would not recommend this because, one, there's a very high chance you're just going to end up with a big hole in your ground, a bunch of angry ants stinging you, and no queen or even brood in sight. So that's not the best plan. So let's say you've found a way to get your queens, you know what you're trying to go after, but you don't know what kind of ants you want. And that brings us to step 2, finding out your species that you want. Now, you are limited to the species in your area if you're ordering off of a website, like I mentioned earlier, because ants are considered plant pests. Therefore, you can only get the ones that are native to your area. But that doesn't apply if you're catching them, because obviously if there's a queen ant in your area, it's obviously native to your area, But it depends on what you want. If you want big, booming, explosive colonies with tons of workers, tons of brood, just workers everywhere, and you want them relatively small and just always furious and angry and hungry, then you're going to want smaller species like Tetramorium, depending on where you live, even fire ants. Phaedoli's a great choice, big-headed ants. Even harvester ants can have some big reactions. But if you want kind of big, robust ants with majors, okay, I guess Phaedoli has majors and that doesn't really count, but carpenter ants. Carpenter ants are a great choice for beginners because they're super easy to observe. You don't need any fancy equipment. You can see fine details even in their larvae with your naked eye. And they're fairly easy to care for. They have a fairly simple diet. And they look very beautiful. But now you know how you're going to get the ants, you know what species you want, but there's still a few more things you need to do before you can actually order your queen and the fun begins. And that is formicariums. Now, some sites will sell queen ants in formicariums or just queen ants and formicariums separate, like Tar Heel ants. They actually do sell queen ants, some of which that come with their own formicariums. But I have a few rather popular options. This is a Tar Heel ant's talus, and doesn't have the nest in there, but this just goes in and is connected by magnets. And then a really great choice for almost every ant species, a Tar Heel ant's mini hearth. I also have an Ants Canada ant tower small and large out in my garage. So, but when your colony is small, now this is one of the biggest mistakes most beginning ant keepers will make. You don't want to move them to a space too large because they'll get stressed out. The queen might even start stress eating her eggs, if not even laying eggs at all. And the workers might become restless, and they can actually die of stress. So that's not good. And you want it at the right humidity too, because too humid, then the larva will rot, and the colony will feel uncomfortable. Too dry, and the larva will just kind of dry out, So this is a very basic setup. It's an AC test tube connected to an AC test tube portal with a backup test tube in case this one gets moldy. And it's a great feeding choice. I have some mealworm in there and a drop of honey. Although they aren't really interested in protein. I guess it's just not that time of the year yet. But yeah, it may not look pretty, but this is probably the most effective right now for their size. Now, you finally got everything. You got your ant farms. You got all of your equipment. It's very dirty, I'm sorry. And this is the point where you're ready to order your queen, and the fun begins. So you're gonna get your colony. I already went over the whole space thing. You probably want to keep them in the test tube that they came in. But most of the times, the test tubes that they come in are very moldy. And it's not like these carpenter ants came in a test tube that had black mold in it. It was disgusting, and I moved them out immediately. And so, but another thing to consider is diet. I showed you the honey drop in mealworm parts. For carpenter ants, I've noticed that they've preferred fruit flies. And I've not so much preferred the ant nectar as to the honey, but the ant nectar is still fine. It's a great food choice. Thank you. Thank you. God, I forgot the company. Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay, whatever. Yeah, Bioformica. Yeah, Bioformica. They also make the liquid feeders, which you see here, up here. And that was an attempted move I tried to make, but they were too stubborn, so I just kept them back there. But yeah, back to diet. So carpenter ants, they like mealworms, but with a lot of the smaller ants, the pavement ants, like the ones you just see in the sidewalk cracks, there's not many rules. You give them whatever you want, as long as it's sterile and it breathes or has breathed before, they'll eat it. And their sugar, well, from my experience with pavement ants, they do not go well around honey. I don't know if I was giving them too big of globs, but they just always get stuck. And you really can't avoid that with sugars, like every sugar that ants would eat, it's usually sticky in some way. So just give them small drops with a toothpick, and that'll be good for them. Let's see, we've gone over how to get them, gone over what species you want to get, formicarium, diet. Now we're going to talk about nuptial flights. So at some point, if you manage to raise them correctly and you're feeding them right and they have the adequate heat, they will start to make alates. And I have not yet dealt with this, so I'm kind of maybe speaking out of other ant keepers' mouths here. But as far as I know, when your colony starts to make alates and they come out of the test tube about ready to fly, or I shouldn't say test tube, at that point the colony would not be in a test tube, hopefully not. You just want to rub some anti-stick barrier, just so the ants can't escape, Fluon, talcum powder Ants Canada uses, and then just set it outside, keep the lid off, let them do their thing. Although if you want to get into the money-making business, you can collect all the elates and the males and put them in a small container and make them anyway. Yeah. So that is most of my knowledge about ant keeping. This has kind of been a ramble, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know any better. But thanks all for watching. That's going to be a wrap. Bye.